And so I think the first step is to really understand, how do you measure your success? Because once you understand how do you measure your success, then you can truly understand what is the work that you need to do, and then start thinking strategically in how can you help the bigger costs of the company, and how can you collaborate across those silos that usually exist within organizations.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Our guest today is Lorraine Armijos. She's an executive coach and consultant and founder of LAR Insights. She's also a U.S. Air Force veteran. Thanks for your service, and thanks for joining us today, Lorraine.
Thank you, Jason.
So tell us why you started LAR Insights and who you're looking to help.
Yeah, so I started LAR Insights after being laid off. That I was doing my thing, and then after getting laid off was really what started me interested in starting my own business. After being laid off, I had been in healthcare my whole career, and I started volunteering, and I realized that the work that I do I started volunteering in a company, in a nonprofit, where you help smaller businesses. And I realized that the work that I had been doing for these larger companies was very transferable in any other industry. And also that made me really excited to help smaller businesses, smaller to medium businesses. And that's really what got me started in LAR Insights. And the people that I support are leaders and businesses that are stuck. They may feel like they're in this hamster wheel. They don't know where to, how to get out, how to develop, how to grow. And so I go in and guide them by helping them with strategy, improving processes, helping them create a strong management system, and develop the leaders. So that way, the result of that is them being more confident, the team being more collaborative, and the employees being more empowered in the work that they're doing.
So what kind of volunteering were you doing? What were you doing with these businesses with the volunteering?
Yes, I was advising them. And so it's a company that has a lot of other advisors. And so depending what these businesses need, they will reach out to you and say, hey, we have X business, we think you're a fit. And so I was supporting them that way.
Excellent. Now, I know you have a background in Lean Six Sigma, and boy, they make these things hard to say on a podcast, don't they? I know you have a background in that, and I think most of our audience kind of knows what that is, and I kind of know what it is, but why don't you tell us more about what it is, why it's important, and how you use it to help your clients?
Yes, absolutely. So I specialize in Lean, which is really created by Toyota. And the goal there is to create value for the clients by reducing waste and improving their efficiency. And this is really important because it allows the client to not only see what the problems it is that they have, but also understand their business better and really engage their whole team to move and improve the company.
And so is that something you learned when you were working in healthcare before you started your own company?
Yes, I learned that way back in 2005. And during that time, I was working in a laboratory and we had consultants coming in. So that was my initial introduction to Lean. And it wasn't a really great experience for me at the beginning, but what helped was that I was able to later on in the same company use it as a leader. And so that is when I was able to see what Lean could do for not only for me as a leader, but for the business, and most importantly for the employees, since they're the ones who are driving the business.
Yeah, I think we all resist those kinds of initiatives at first. I remember first learning about Lean and Six Sigma in the Air Force and going, I don't need this. I'm a good leader. I know my team. I know my people. I don't need this. And then I saw later on, I was like, oh, there's some good stuff here that we can use. So
Yes, it's definitely it's usually seen as the flavor of the month. I think for employees, whenever it comes into organizations, it's seen as a flavor of the month. And then sometimes for leaders who want it, they may believe that it's something that they can just delegate. But truly, it's something that as a leader, they need to transform their own leadership and really create habits to make lean work not only for them, but for the business itself.
as you mentioned, you spent a lot of your career in the healthcare industry. You've seen the ins and outs of it. What are some of the challenges with leadership in that industry?
In healthcare, we have all these clinicians who come in to help the patient, right? And that's what we want. We truly want clinicians, and by that I mean, from the person taking in your ID and your insurance all the way to the physicians. They're all going to healthcare to help people, right? Which is, once again, this is what we want. What happens though is that they learn once they join healthcare, they start learning how to develop people. It's not something that they go to school for. And so it can come very easy for some people. There's some people in healthcare that I've seen that come very easy. And then there are others that it's not very intuitive because they may feel that it's going against what they're doing, which is helping people. So that can be sometimes challenging. What's great in healthcare is that not only do you have physicians or clinicians working, but you also have the non-clinical side. And if the company is doing great, they both pair really, really well, where they're able to do both really well at the same time.
It's funny because we see the same thing in our time in the military, right? People don't typically come into the military to be leaders, right? They come in to fly planes or to fix planes or to work in a lab or to do whatever it is they're going to do. And then we kind of sneak this leadership stuff in on them under the radar, starting with the first day they come into basic training or officer training, right? And then later on, we're like, yeah, we've been preparing you to be a leader all the time. You're ready. And everyone goes, oh, you got me. But you talked about the challenges. What, especially the folks who resist, what can we do to address these challenges to develop strong leaders on both the clinical and the administrative side of healthcare?
One of the things, like you mentioned in the military, one of the things that was really helpful for me was really role modeling that behavior, right? I was able, when I was in the military, I was able to see people that were supporting me, right? They really role model what support is, what developing me was, and what that created was me wanting to help others, right? And you continue that cycle. And I think it's really important for those leaders who probably have already developed where they need to be to really role model and do the same thing, where not only they role model, but they continue developing everybody else. Because what happens is developing is it's not second nature to people. It's leaders get into their positions because they're good at fixing problems. But then when they go to the leadership role, they realize that they need to do something different. But they just continue the cycle of fixing things. And so I think that if we start developing people and really role modeling what that looks like, we would be able to really impact more leaders out there.
Yeah, it really does take a conscious effort. Even in the Air Force, we didn't necessarily have, not every officer, not every leader was a great role model of developing emerging leaders. And I know when I was a young officer, I made this mistake myself. I know a lot of people do, is you get into a leadership position, you start to feel like you need to do everything yourself. And when you try to do everything yourself, you can't really succeed as a leader for a number of reasons we'll talk about. But I think the most important job we have as leaders is developing the leaders coming up behind us. And when we make that a priority, now the work starts to take care of itself, right? We're developing these leaders who start to lead and take accountability for their own role, their own work, and then start to lead the people on their team as well, right?
Yeah, and I think that is so important for leaders to understand, because it takes time to develop people, right? That is one thing that when I work with the leaders that I support, is that it's not only telling them what to do, but you need to be patient and allow them to make mistakes. You need to be patient and ask them questions and help them think deeper, because that is how you're going to be able to develop them. Giving them the answer is not the way to go. And so it's really thinking about the long-term gains versus that 1 hour meeting that you have that you want to get everything in and tell them what to do. So you really need to think long-term.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. If you feel like you're doing everything yourself, if you feel like you're doing everybody's job for them, you're not spending enough time developing them as leaders, you're doing their job for them.
Exactly.
One of the other big challenges I found as I grew as a military officer was shifting from a tactical mindset to a strategic mindset. So how can we help emerging leaders start to think more strategically on their journey?
One of the things that I've noticed in my experience is that leaders, or overall in our organization, they're not measuring the right things for their own success. One of the things that I always ask when I start with companies or with leaders is, how do you measure your success? And that is something that many are not able to answer, or the immediate is the financial piece, which is great, right? I mean, of course, we want these businesses to thrive financially, but there's more to it. And so I think the first step is to really understand, how do you measure your success? Because once you understand how do you measure your success, then you can truly understand what is the work that you need to do, and then start thinking strategically in how can you help the bigger costs of the company, and how can you collaborate across those silos that usually exist within organizations.
Yeah, if you can't tell someone how you define success, how you're measuring success, if you haven't thought about it, it's something you need to think about right now. We've all been in organizations where there are a lot of metrics, right? There's these weird extremes, right? We measure everything down to a tiny detail, or the leadership wants everything boiled up to one metric that doesn't make sense, right? We get into these extremes, and the real question is, for any metric, like, we don't measure things just because it's fun, right? Nobody measures things because it's fun, but we do a lot of measuring just to measure, right? And the real question is, we measure things so that we know when we're done. We know that when we've achieved something, right?
Yes, and what happens is that the same metric is going through from, like, let's say CEO all the way to the front line. But in reality, it's important to understand, what is your sphere of control, and is that the right metric? And if it's not, that is ensuring that you have control of making a change, and even taking it a next level to understand, how do you measure the frontline work? Because what happens is that in the front line, there's a lot of processes that are happening. And how do you measure that? And unfortunately, sometimes it's not very easy to measure. Sometimes it has to be maybe manual. But without understanding how to measure all the way to the front line, and how do you measure the success of those processes that you have, then you're not going to be able to see how any change is improving when you start looking up through the organization. So you really need to go top all the way to the front, and understand that everything is different.
Next, because getting emerging leaders to start thinking more strategically is a challenge, but there's also a challenge going the other way, right? When senior leaders are thinking big picture, how do we make sure that the strategy and the big picture is carried all the way down to that front line? What are some things we can do as leaders at any level to make sure that the folks on the front line know why they're doing what they're doing?
I'm glad you bring that up, because that is one of the things that is so important, is that on the top CEO level, right? They create these strategies, they have all these group of people working together. And then it's how do you, like you say, right? How do you go all the front? And the first thing is simplify it, right? Remove the jargon, because what happens is there's these big words. What you want to do is you want to make sure that it's simplified for the frontline team. The other thing that you want to do is communicate. An email is not enough. A meeting is not enough. And so how do you communicate every single layer of the organization? Continue that communication. If you have weekly meetings with your team, show them the why behind it and show how their work aligns. And never stop that communication, because once you stop it, people forget. So you need to continue it. And what's going to happen is that once the frontline team understands where the organization wants to go, they're able to understand what their value is and understand how their work affects the bigger picture. And now you can start really moving everyone in the same direction.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we as leaders can emphasize too much, is the impact that what people on the front line do to help our clients, our customers, whoever it is that we impact in the healthcare world, patients, right? We all get so focused on doing our jobs, we focus on the doing and not necessarily who the person is who's really being impacted. And I don't think we can ever emphasize that or reemphasize that too many times as leaders. You talked a little bit about jargon and email and how they can be barriers to communication for the kind of communication you're talking about. What are some other barriers you see when you work with companies on the barrier that prevent clear communication, proper communication between the top and the front line and in between, and how can we overcome them?
One of them is the structure in which you are talking to people. What happens sometimes is that you are not, as a leader, you're not meeting with them enough. Right? There's a too much, right, where time is a limited resource and you don't want to meet too much. But at the same time, there is when you don't meet enough. And so it is really important for organizations to have a structure in which the communication is of goals, or in this case, strategy, right? It goes top down. And then on the opposite, you want to make sure barriers or how the work is being done to go bottom up. And so you really want to ensure that that's strong. And that is what we call in Lean a management system. And that's something that I support businesses to do, because without this level of communication, number one, everything gets diluted by the time it gets down. And number two, you're unable to clearly communicate barriers to the leaders to help them remove them.
So it sounds like having a little bit of structure in place, some guidelines, is very helpful to. This is about how much you want to be communicating one-on-one with each of your team members. A little more is probably okay. A little less is probably okay, depending on the team member. But again, staying away from the extremes, right?
Yes, and asking people. I think it's really important, hopefully in the organization, there's psychological safety, to be able to ask, is this of value to you? What can we change in this meeting? How can we improve it? Because it has to be a value not only for the leader, but also for the employee. So it's really important to always ask for feedback to be able to adjust and ensure that everyone is getting what they need.
Absolutely. So when you bring and recommend these changes into a company, do you ever encounter any resistance?
Yes, initially, as I mentioned earlier, initially the leaders usually think it's something that you can delegate. And it's like, okay, quick, great, let's make these changes. You tell them what they need to do, and we'll go from there. And so the first part is for me to ensure that the leaders are aware that it's it's not going to work that way. That for this to be very successful, we need all leaders on board, and leaders need to start transforming the way they lead. Then the other piece are the employees, is that sometimes, they've been there in the company for a very long time, or they're great employees, are doing great work, and now you're asking them to change, right? Whenever they've been doing a great job. So why change now? So it's really important to message, right? One, with the leader, help them develop, and then do the right messaging for the frontline teams to let them know that the changes that they will be seeing is really to empower them and to ensure that everyone is doing the great work they should be doing.
Yeah, I think we've all seen where there's some initiative that comes along and a leader delegates it to somebody
Yes.
else. And then everyone else says, all right, they're going to tell us to do a bunch of stuff, but let's see if in like 2 weeks they're still talking about this, right? Let's see how important this is to the boss, or if it's just important to the person they delegated it to. Because if it's not important to the boss, we're never going to have to do it.
Yeah, and I've had situations where, I'm very fortunate that I have really great rapport with teams, and they'll be like, Lorraine, I'm behind you 100%, but why is my leader not doing the work, right? So they're able to see, and you can hide that for a little bit, but everyone can see that if the leader is not on board, they will be on board maybe just for a little bit, but then they're going to stop. So whatever the leader, like you said, always, whatever the leader's talking about is what people will follow and will do.
Yeah, what's important to people by where they spend their time, where they spend their money, where they spend their energy, right? What they talk about. If the leader's not putting any resources against something, if the leader's not spending any time checking up on how it's going and making sure everybody's doing it, and if they're not talking about it and promoting it, it's clearly not that important to them.
Yes. And I've had leaders that they're bought into it, they're in it to win it, and you can see how the team just follows them, they transform. And so definitely the leader is the one that it needs to start with the leader. Always.
Absolutely. And I think we've all known leaders where they are bought into something, but they're not overtly showing that interest, that they're bought into it. And that's as bad as not being bought. That's actually probably worse than not being bought into it, because now you're really bought into it, but you're not getting what you're looking for as a leader.
Yes. And so with Lean, for example, we want leaders to go out to the place where the work happens. We don't want leaders to be in the office. We want them to be out there, to talk to the team, to understand what is going on, to talk to them about the problems, to ask them open-ended questions to help them think deeper on what solutions could come up. And so definitely people will see that there is a gap there if they don't start seeing their leaders out there and invested in the work.
I learned a very valuable lesson when I was deployed to Iraq. My boss was a colonel, and he was always out, and he would come back every day from being out around Baghdad or around the country, and then he would delete his email. He would do as much as email as he could do till about 10 p.m., and he would just delete it and leave. And I'm not advocating anybody do this, but the lesson is, it's really important to be out where you need to be out, to be doing what you need to be doing. The email will be there. His philosophy was, if it's important, they'll email me again. Right now, the only people he had to answer to on in all of the country were the 1-star and the 3-star, so that was kind of easy for him to say. But the point is, there are ways to get away from the administrative duties, so you can focus on being out with your team, being out with your people, and developing them into future leaders. Email will be there. Don't worry about it.
Yes, and hopefully, right, it all the way through the organization, there's that understanding. Because I think that's the other piece that's really important, is that, hey, be with your team, talk to them, understand what's happening, and it's okay if you don't respond to that email in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, the more we're out with our team, the fewer emails we need to send, right?
Correct. And the more empowered the team is, the less the team is going to need you 24/7.
Right. So the more you're out with your team, the fewer emails they're going to send you. So this is
Yes.
win-win for everybody.
Yes, and that is something that I'm always talking to the leaders is about empowering the team. Right? When you empower the team and they're able to start seeing the work as their own and understanding the why, going back to the strategy, then you have a team that can see the problem, can solve their own problems, and you as a leader get time back to do other things that you have to do as a leader.
I love it. All right, let's take a break from the serious questions. Let's play a game. Are you up for a game?
Okay, let's do this.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Doesn't need to be a one-word answer. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like to. We want to get to know Lorraine a little bit, more so than we get from asking these leadership and professional questions, okay?
Okay.
Ready to start?
Yes.
All right. Lorraine Armijos, rapid response round.
Okay.
Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
I love TED Talk. I would say that is my first go-to. And yeah, I would say TED Talk is the first one that comes to mind.
That's awesome. We are actually doing something here in but by the time this airs, we will have already done it. But we're doing this in Las Vegas. We're trying to spread it a little bit. A community organizer here in the veteran community, the entrepreneur community, has put together a thing called Vet Talks, which are basically TED Talks for veteran stories. So, yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. I think we have 7 or 8. It's going to be. You all will know that it already happened on July 7th, but. Yeah, I think it's 8 speakers, 8 minutes each, 8 slides, and so we're gonna hear some really compelling veteran stories. Or
oh my god, that's so awesome!
Yeah,
you know what? I love TED Talks because I always love to learn, and in that podcast, they cover everything, and so that is to me, I always learn from that one, and so it's the one that I always go to. If I'm not listening to that, I am listening to my kids' podcast.
Okay. Your kids have a podcast?
Well, they don't have a podcast, but they listen to podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Probably smart that you're listening to what your kids are listening to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And theirs is funny and also very, I get to learn a lot from there.
All right. A leadership practice you wish more people would adopt?
Reflection. I believe that, I always say this, that reflection is free. And if you take 5 minutes every day to really understand what went well in your day, what didn't go well, and what can you improve, and kind of keep tabs on that, you can develop yourself for free in small increments.
It's a great place to start.
Yes.
The biggest influence in your life?
I would have to say that the biggest influence has been my mom. She was a single mother. She raising me, and I always saw how hard she worked. And I was able to appreciate her a lot more now when I have kids, because I know how much work they are. And so being able to see her, always fight, and even now, she's been battling cancer and continues to fight with such positivity. It's very inspiring to me, and I can only hope half of what she's been in her life so far.
Well, we'll all be keeping your mom and your family in our thoughts and wishing you all the best with all that going on.
Oh, thank you.
Your favorite summertime activity?
The beach. I love the beach. I was raised maybe like 45 minutes away from the beach, so I was there summer. I love the smell. I can be in the beach any day.
All right. And to follow up on that, what is your dream vacation spot?
I've been wanting to go to Japan. I've never been to Japan, and I not only love the food, I love their culture. I love just the pictures that I see, not only the city of Tokyo, but you see the outsides, the trees. Lean comes from Japan also. So yeah, Japan would be one that I've been wanting to go.
That sounds great. Well, technically I have. I've been in the airport a couple times at Tokyo on connections, but that's it. That's the only Japan I've ever done. So I would love to go see that too.
Yes. And when I decide to go, I am going to give myself time to learn Japanese. That is
absolutely. What is a tech trend you're excited about?
Well, I think what AI is doing and how fast is just transforming everything is something that we all should keep an eye on, because it's moving on so fast that if we blink, I feel like so many things are going to start transforming and we're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I think AI or otherwise, it's really important to keep up with the pace of technology right now. Even if you make conscious choices not to use it, that's one thing. But we can't just ignore it. We have to at least keep up with what's going on.
Yes.
All right, last one. Your favorite sports team or player?
I don't follow sports, so I'm out here. I love soccer, so I watch soccer during the World Cup. That is my time where I watch soccer the whole time. And my favorite team, I was raised in Ecuador, so that is who I follow. We never go too far, unfortunately, during the World Cup. But hey, I still follow them and root for them until we're out. So hopefully this coming World Cup we'll make it further.
I hope so. And I've watched a little World Cup. I kind of wish, and I don't know a ton about it, but I kind of wish World Cup was more like our NCAA basketball tournament here, where like anything can happen. But that's not how World Cup seems to go, kind of the way everyone expects it to go, right?
Yes, and it's so much fun, especially if you go to a game like when I was in Ecuador, I would just watch soccer there. It's just a different vibe. It can be a little too much at times, but it's a lot of fun. So
I have been watching, there's this show called Welcome to Wrexham, and it is Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, who are both actors. They bought a Welsh soccer team in the English Soccer League. And so I think they're on like season 4 now, and they've been moving up in the ranks. And so it's been really, but it's not, I thought it was going to be kind of about the business of owning a football team, which is the proper term for the English. I thought it was going to be about the business of owning a football team, but they also, they really get into the town and the people and this loving relationship between the team and the people and in the town. And it's really a great show, but English football fans, I'll put them toe to toe against our most rabid fans for anything in this country. They are into it.
I'm gonna have to watch it. I've seen the trailer and the commercials of it, but I haven't watched it yet, so I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's great. Super, super heartwarming. Really, really amazing stories about this kind of town in decline in Wales, and then how this has helped turn the town around.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out.
All right. Well, thanks for playing our game. You were a good sport. It's always nice to get to know a little bit about our guests. As we get back to it, please tell us a little bit about your time in the Air Force and what you learned from leadership there.
Yeah, so in the Air Force, I was a medical laboratory technologist, and there were 3 things that I learned. Number 1 is accountability. It was one of the first lessons that you learn in basic training. So that one, I also learned, we talked earlier about development. That was really important for me. And then the last one is alignment. I feel that in the military, right, we all are going, we all know what we need to do. We're all going towards the same direction. So those are the 3 things that I was able to take from the military. And I wasn't really able to see it until I left, right? Until I came back to civilian life and saw how other organizations are ran. And so those are the three main things that I take away.
Well, that was going to be my next question is what was different when you transitioned out? What was your transition out of the military into the civilian workforce like? And what did you notice that's different? I'd love to I'd love to know what the differences you saw were and how you kind of personally addressed moving from the military workforce and transitioning into the civilian workforce.
Yeah, so I think everyone has a different transition, and for me, the transition was harder was within the organizations because I said accountability, and around accountability, I felt like in the Air Force I wasn't going to be able to get away with things very easily. But when I came to civilian job, what I would see is that those who weren't working hard enough, the work would be removed from them and given to somebody else versus really addressing the problem. Right? So that is the one thing that to me just was very surprising. It's like, why not have that difficult conversation in that moment? A story that I always share was I was running late to our morning meeting, and I was running late, so I was like, I'll get my cup of coffee. I might as well run late. And so I stopped probably by Starbucks, and as I walk into the meeting, it was she immediately stopped the meeting to address that not only was I late, but I had the audacity, I don't think that was the word that she used, but I had the audacity to make myself even more late by stopping for a cup of coffee. And so that is something that I always remember, and trust me, if I'm ever late, I never pull by a Starbucks or anywhere to get my extra cup of coffee. So that is the one thing that I always remember, and I'm always surprised that we don't have more of that in our regular civilian world.
Yeah, so here is the pro tip for if you are late and you're going to stop for coffee anyway. The pro tip is make sure you get coffee for everyone and donuts or pastries or whatever for everyone, because no matter how much the boss yells at you, now you're a hero to everyone else in the meeting.
I needed you that day. So yes, that's a good pro tip.
That's the move. If you're running super late, nothing makes up for it like bringing a breakfast burrito, or if it's an afternoon meeting, ice cream sandwiches for everyone.
Yes, good. That's a really great tip.
So there are a lot of great things we learned in the military: accountability, alignment, communication, all the great things we learned in the military, all the great things we talked about. But when we do transition out of the military into civilian life, especially in a leadership role, I'm always curious about, with our veterans, were there lessons you learned in the military that maybe needed to be left behind in the military as you came into the civilian workforce?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I had such a great experience with my team. I guess the only thing that maybe comes to mind, and I don't remember it being such a big problem, but at times there was some lack of professionalism. But I feel that that's everywhere. So did you feel that when you were in the military?
You're not wrong. I spent a lot of my time working flight testing with squadrons where a lot of the people came from the fighter pilot world. And,
okay, yes.
Now, for people who don't know, fighter pilots are consummate professionals, putting their lives on the line, putting their bodies on the line every day, even if they're not in combat. It is challenging. It is dangerous, even under the best of circumstances. And because of that, there's often some humor that, you might find goes along with people who are putting their lives on the line every day and doing a really hard job. But it's not always the most professional, and it doesn't always translate outside of the squadron to other environments. The other thing I really saw, because I worked across different commands, so I worked the flight testing stuff with the fighter and bomber world. Mm-hmm. I worked space stuff where we crossed kind of into the ballistic missile world, and they have their own culture. And sometimes there's also a rigidity to procedure and standards that doesn't serve us. And I've seen that, and I've even seen that in myself coming out of the military, and I've had to kind of kick myself and say, no, this is not a time to be rigid about procedure and standards. This is a time to be flexible.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes. That's such a great question. I've never really thought about it. And although I say maybe lack of professionalism, I feel like you can find that anywhere. And I truly did have such a great experience that I think it's time for me to reflect on your question and see what I come up with.
Yeah, it's transitioning out of the military into the civilian workforce is challenging for everyone. And just from some of the things, and I didn't realize it until very recently that sometimes there are lessons that we've learned in the military that are better left there or not appropriate to what we're doing now. And that's, you see this on TikTok. There's a lot of people on TikTok who make these funny little skits about the new military guy coming into the civilian workforce, right? And he's like reporting Johnny because he's 30 seconds late, right? And the boss doesn't want to hear it because who cares, 30 seconds, right? So it's a question that crossed my mind a few months ago, and when I get a chance to talk to veterans, I like to ask them what were things you felt like you needed to, what were things that you felt like maybe were better left behind or don't apply all the time in the civilian world.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you.
All right. So increasingly, young people entering the workforce are saying they want their work to have meaning. It's actually not new. When people are surveyed, they have talked about this for years. I want to feel purpose. I want my work to have meaning. But I think people are much more vocal about it now. How can we as leaders help our teams find meaning and purpose?
Yeah, I think I know I've always felt like I want my job to have meaning. So I love that now people are more vocal, because they're being transparent, right, of what they need and what they want. And it goes back to what we spoke earlier about that communication, right? Understanding where the company is going and sharing that communication of the why all across. And leaders need to work with their employees and tell them, why is this important? And that usually makes a huge difference for employees. And hey, if you've done a great job explaining the why, if you've done a great job explaining how to measure their success, if you've done a great job empowering them, and they still don't find meaning, then you've done your part. And it's probably best that person is not with you because they're not aligned to where your company wants to go. But as leaders, we do need to do our due diligence to ensure that our employees stay and feel empowered and feel that they have value in the work.
I love that. I especially love the part about there are things we need to do as leaders, but there's also things that individuals need to do as well to find purpose.
Yes.
So how are you adopting new technology into your leadership practice, and what advice do you have for leaders about technology?
Well, being a small business, I need to keep up with technology. So I am always not only trying to read, but also trying new apps. I have sometimes clients are like, hey, do you work with this application? And if I say no, I immediately go in and I start learning about it because it may be something that's coming up. I always also asking AI, like, what are the new things that are coming up so I can learn and be efficient at it, because I want my clients, I want to be efficient in the way that I do the work. And I don't have, a whole building full of people that are supporting me. So I definitely need to take it on and always do my due diligence to understand how can I be more efficient with my clients? How can my clients get the best service that they can with me.
When you go into companies, you work kind of at multiple levels. You sometimes work with the C-suite folks. You sometimes work with the front line. Sometimes you're working all across the different levels of the company. Do you find differences in the way we need to approach the different generations in the workplace, especially when it comes to adopting new technology?
Yes, I think that definitely generationally there is, you do see the younger people that are really thriving in the technology that is coming. And so it is important, not only generationally, but also for companies to be able to adapt to the new things that are coming, because we want teams and organizations to get their information quicker. We want people to get their metrics quicker, right? And so it is important for everyone to adapt to the new technology that they may have. And if they don't have the technology, we want CEOs, we want everyone at every level to start thinking, what else can we bring to our organization to make it more efficient? Because now there are so many more ways to make work more efficient.
While we're on the topic of technology, I always like to get guests to weigh in on the remote work debate. What do you think about the remote work debate?
Yes. I do believe that there are some jobs that need to be at the office. And there are some jobs who can be done remote. I know there is the camp of let's come more into work to build the culture. I am more in the middle, in that what I've been seeing at times is that people come into the office and all the meetings are virtual. And why is my question? Why are we having people go into the office to have virtual meetings, to increase traffic, to have maybe employees unsatisfied with their jobs because they may want to work remotely? So I think it's important to listen to your employees and to see, does it make sense? And let's not bring people into the office just because everybody else is doing it. It's important to, once again, to listen and see, is it bringing value, and what is the value that is having by bringing people in? So there's a lot of thinking and reflection that I believe needs to go in before we move on.
We hear a lot of rationale for bringing people back to the office. It's good for culture. It's good for creativity. It's good for collaboration. And then we see everyone's just sitting at their desk, doing Zoom meetings at their desk. And to which I say, if those are your reasons for bringing people back to the office as leaders, we better be actively making sure we are developing and shaping the culture. We're encouraging creativity. We're putting people together to make sure those creative and collaborative things happen. Otherwise, it's just an excuse so you can have people where you can see them, right?
Exactly. To me, that is the first thing that comes to mind is how, once again, going back to how do you measure success? How are you measuring success to those people that are in or out of the office, right? And if you don't know how you're measuring your success, don't just bring them in, because you're still going to be in the I don't know how to measure their success. Because just because they're in the office doesn't mean they're being more productive than at home. So how are you measuring success? Are you really, I love what you said, are you really creating the culture that you want to have, being intentional of the meetings that you're having, and talk to them? Because some people do want to come in, right? And some people thrive coming into the office and they want that. So it's really about listening, being intentional, and understanding how to measure their success.
Yep. Just because you can see someone sitting at their desk doesn't mean they're working. So
exactly.
So get out from behind yours and go talk to them, right?
Yes, exactly. Go and see where the work is happening.
I love it. What's coming up for you for the rest of 2025?
It's a great question. So in next week, I am taking a look at my last 6 months. So every month I have my own metrics. And so I'm going to take time to reflect on my last 6 months, how I've been doing, what is it I've been doing to go ahead and prepare for the next 6 months. I don't believe in doing strategy once a year and hoping for the best each month. And so I like to be intentional and, focusing in. And some of the things that I'm going to keep doing is continue to be out there, meeting other people, learning from others. That is something that this year I've been doing a lot. There's a lot of networking and learning from people and seeing how I can also contribute to other people's knowledge and development. One of the things that I have is I have pro bono hours in my company. Every year I do that because it's really important for me to support those who may not be able to afford developing, right? There's a lot of great people out there that want to, they're maybe entrepreneurs or they're leaders who want to be better. And so I'm going to continue doing that for the rest of the year.
That sounds amazing. So for everyone watching or listening right now, what's the one thing we can start doing today to ensure our companies are aligned at every level?
Yeah, so alignment, when I think of alignment, I think not only of strategy, right? So really clarify and understand what is your strategy. But then going back to how do you measure, number one, how do you measure that your strategy is going to be successful? So that is at an organizational level. And then looking at each tier to see, going back to metrics, to see, are they measuring what they're in control of? And really looking all the way to the front line, to the process, and see how are their processes doing and how do you measure their success? Because if you do that, what's going to happen is you're able to see a clear picture of what's going well, what's not going well, and what are the areas that you need to improve.
I love it. Where can everyone find you so they can thank you for joining us today?
So you can find me on my website, www.larinsights.com. Also on Instagram, LinkedIn.
Well, and we'll get everything you send us and everything you talked about. We'll link that up in the episode description of the show notes, so people don't have to try to write that down while they're listening and they're driving their car right now. So, but I want to thank you for joining us, Lorraine. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it. Leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're on a podcast platform where you can leave a review, please give us a 5-star review. It helps us build our audience and get out to more people so they can hear the amazing stories and advice from folks like Lorraine. We've got a lot more great interviews coming your way. So go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.